It tells us his memory is being kept very much alive by a Coral Springs collector.
There was only one headline in the newspapers 22 years ago today. Most people 26, 27 years of age or older vividly remember where they were, what they were doing on this day in 1963.
22 years ago today, I was in Monroe, Michigan in the 4th grade class. I was 9 years old, and we were studying U.S. presidents. And on that Friday morning, we started studying President Kennedy. And my principal walked in and said that the president was killed.
From that time on, Fred Cicelli became an avid collector of Kennedy memorabilia. He has a collection of over 150 newspapers dated November 22, 1963. He has an exact replica of the 1961 Lincoln Continental Parade car Kennedy rode in Dallas. Cicelli has over 20,000 items relating to John F. Kennedy.
I wanted to find a way that I could have other people and myself remember President Kennedy. So I guess that's what prompted it. I want other people to remember President Kennedy, not to forget him.
Fred Cicelli is not an assassination buff. His collection capitalizes on the life of Kennedy. Someday he has dreams of opening a museum for his vast collection.
I think that John Kennedy was a president that was a president of his time, that is of the 1960s, but more importantly, I think he's a president of the 1980s.
In Coral Springs, Don Dare, News Center 7.
People still remember that day vividly.
And exactly where they were, Sam Kent.
Healthy and with a long tale of where he's been.
Is still one of the president's biggest fans. He has more than 7,000 pieces of Kennedy memorabilia. Just a fraction of that material, including a replica of the president's limo, is on display through this weekend at Pompano Square Shopping Center. For Cicelli and many other Americans, Kennedy is still one of the country's best-loved presidents, and he's committed to keeping those memories alive.
Phones were ringing.
Political promoter
Tonight to the Armando Garcia,
used by the Canada filing.
Florida sailor killed on. Touching tributes at Arlington and around the country today for our nation's 35th president. Had he lived, John Kennedy would have celebrated a birthday today. Eyewitness News reporter Jerry Helfman says the memory of JFK still touches America.
A city does not become free merely by calling it a free city.
He would have been 70 years old today. Members of the Kennedy clan gathered in Cambridge, Massachusetts to dedicate a park in his honor. A wreath was laid on his grave at Arlington National Cemetery. Most people remember not his birthday, but rather where they were the day he died.
I went home, my mother was crying, and then when I got home from school, my father was crying, and it made a very big impression on me as a young person, because young people are impressionable, to see these adults crying. So I knew there was something that I had to do to learn more about President Kennedy.
From that day on, Fred Cicelli devoted his life to collecting Kennedy memorabilia. He's got a plate collection, a book collection, a photograph collection, commemorative coins, and the front pages of newspapers from November of 1963. Perhaps the most notable piece of his collection, a 1961 Lincoln Continental, a replica of the presidential limousine in which Kennedy was assassinated.
There was a time that the country was sort of innocent. You could have a United States president ride in an open convertible and didn't think twice about the fate what was going to happen. Today in 1987, that's unheard of. So really, I want people to remember President Kennedy, but I also want people to remember the 1960s.
Cicelli says he capitalizes on Kennedy's life, not his death. He calls him the last president we all felt good about. Cicelli will take his collection on the road next year. He hopes to establish a museum near the Kennedy Space Center, where he says the only thing Kennedy is remembered by is his name. He also says Kennedy should be remembered not only on November 22nd, but on his birthday as well. In Coral Springs, Jerry Huffman, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.